But I have a question for you, and I want you to tell me the truth. Deep down, do you ever sit in the fear that you may end up old, alone, and isolated? If so, you are in the right place. Hey, sweet babies, I'm Candice, and let me tell you that I have been where you are. For years, I was unclear about my love life and trying to achieve someone else's idea of relationships. My family's, the churches, the millions of romance novels that I read throughout high school, none of which got me anywhere but unhappy with my love life. But guess what? It took abuse, grief, and homelessness for me to learn how to let go of control and be guided to transform my love life. I broke free from those struggle love cycles and created a love life that I love, that loves me back. And now I'm here to guide you to do the same. So I want you to join me on this journey from feeling disappointed in your relationship history to madly in love, from broken and guarded to whole and happy. And I'm here every week. But listen, I don't want you to just watch me or just listen to the show. I want you to comment and engage and be a part of the conversation. Whether you're here with us live or you're watching later on, I want you to engage with us. I talk a lot, so you got to get in where you fit in. Let's get started. I want to introduce you to my guest. I'm very, very excited about my guest. His name is Dr. Jeremy Holloway. And he is a professor of geriatric studies at the University of North Dakota. He's also the director of geriatric education. He specializes in resiliency, self-efficacy, and connectedness of individuals. His curriculum helps combat the social isolation and loneliness of older adults. Now, this is a thing, honey. I mean, if you have parents, I have a parent who's in assisted living. I feel like, they're all the baby boomers right now. There's 51 million of them right now. So many older adults are isolated and alone, particularly during the pandemic. He's also a diversity, equity, and inclusion leader and curriculum specialist with 20 years of professional and global experience. Dr. Holloway has started an intergenerational and interdisciplinary program focused on decreasing the sense of isolation and loneliness for older adults. And when we tell you about this program, it's amazing. It's called Tellegacy. Dr. Holloway has led strategic planning, program design, and assisted in the implementation for over 30 groups and organizations in 10 countries for multiple organizations and sectors of healthcare, business, church ministries, and higher education. He is also a married man and a father of 4 children under 8 years old. So we're talking about a caregiver, a caretaker, someone who actually is involved in this work around human connectedness. So let me bring him on.
Candice.
Welcome, Dr. Holloway.
Good to see you. Good to see you. I'm very happy to be here today.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you. I'm happy that you were willing to say yes and that you said yes so quickly, because we turned this around within a day to have you here. So thank you for being on board for that.
It's my honor. It's my honor. Very excited.
Awesome. So today we are talking about, if you're afraid, here's why you won't end up alone and isolated, right? We want to talk about this conversation because here's why. Here's why I wanted to have this conversation, not just with you, but just in general. One of the hardest and most disempowering beliefs is that being single and being single now means old, alone, and isolated later. So a lot of people navigate their love life with this idea that I have to have someone, I have to attach to someone because one day I'm going to be old and alone, and I don't want to go out that way. Another reason I think is because people have genuine fears around growing older, right? And what that looks like. And I think in our society, it's assumed that elders are not cared for. Elders are left, to their own devices, because that's true in a lot of cases. I think the statistics are high. But I think because of people like you, it's good to know that there are people that care about us as we're growing older, right? As human beings. And also another reason is I want people to know that there are choices that we can make while we're younger that increase the likelihood that we spend our older years around people that we love. And that there are solid, steps we can take, choices we make. We often talk about how statistically, especially with baby boomers, they come from a generation where connectedness and emotions and emotional intelligence wasn't as valued. So a lot of times, a lot of people have ended up old and alone because they've not known how to connect with people on a
Mm.
human level, right?
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So that's why I'm excited to have you here. I think these are a lot of good reasons for why we need to be in this conversation, even if you're 25, 30, 35 years old. And, because I know for myself, dating as an adult, anytime that I was not in a relationship, that was my fear. Oh, I'm going to be old and I'm going to be alone.
Right, right. Yeah. It does start it now, right? It starts now, whether you're 5 years old, 15, 25, etc. Because there's a lot of things we learn through studying about social isolation and loneliness. And so my story goes back to 2020 March when
Mm.
the pandemic hit. And I learned about older adults who were feeling socially isolated and alone because of the pandemic. They were literally not able to leave their rooms
Yeah.
in nursing homes or assisted living communities, et cetera. And it broke my heart. I wanted to do something. I wanted to help. And then I created Tellegacy. And I learned a lot about human connection and how it's something that we all really need and can pursue.
Yeah. And it's funny because until we talked yesterday, even having a parent who's in assisted living, I hadn't really thought about the scope of that during the pandemic.
Mm.
Just the scope of like being someone who is of a certain age and that you can't go anywhere because it was dangerous. It was so dangerous if you were over 50, right?
Right.
Also, just, that compiled with the fact that, a lot of people who are already alone and older are, neglected. And then now you're stuck where you are.
Right.
Right. So I imagine that had a really terrible impact on a lot of people. You had mentioned yesterday about the mortality rate,
Mm.
that
Yeah.
people thought it was COVID that was killing people, but you said that isolation was pretty high up there on that list as well, right?
Yeah, so for especially for older adults, and I found out it was a pre-existing issue. So a lot of older adults were feeling socially isolated and alone before the pandemic, but the pandemic definitely exacerbated the whole thing, right? It like grew it grew in a gargantuous amount. So social isolation and loneliness is cited to having negative health effects equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It brings a lot of different disparities, such as heart disease, depression, suicide, etc. It's an important thing that we stay connected. Now, what I like to tell people is that socially staying socially connected really starts with having a connected relationship with yourself, right?
Mm, yeah.
Because the dialogue that we're having in our minds or what have you is a dialogue that we're given to other people, especially when we're talking about romantic relationships. That's like bringing it up to the next level when it comes to communication. How am I communicating with myself? How am I taking care of myself? That's where it starts, and then I can take it over to the next level and taking care of another person.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you said that because I always talk a lot about self relationship and how our relationships are a mirror of what's going
Mm,
on with ourselves, right?
mm, man.
Yeah, and I also love that it's coming from you because I think that men of color get a bad rap and a lack of understanding of what kind of caretakers that you can be. And I love that you have positioned yourself in life as a caretaker in a big way. Like you take care of old and young. You got a whole brood of
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, and I'm the youngest of four, kids. My dad and mom, they had four kids, and my brother's the oldest. I'm the youngest, and with my two sisters in the middle. So, I was familiar with it, but I was your typical, if there was a typical like, black male when it came to relationships, maybe I was. I didn't really pursue like relationships in that kind of way. I grew up listening to hip hop and had my own thoughts about like romantic relationships. But,
Yeah.
over time, I started to understand that how important relationships were, even if they were different, right? Because that's the thing. My pride said that I wanted to have this kind of relationship, perfect relationship without any problems with someone exactly like me. And
Yeah.
the truth is, I don't need someone exactly like, I already got someone exactly like me. That's me. I need to learn how to be with someone that's different than me, can enhance my life and make it better. So that's what I pursued.
I love that you mentioned that because I think that, one of the things that we can often struggle with, especially as single people, and especially as people who are sort of evolving into this place of understanding how to be in self relationship and take care of our mental health, is
Mm.
that, we believe in, isolating to protect our peace. And since
Hmm.
we're talking about isolation, I think a lot of that comes from because we have an expectation that other people be not only are like us, but what we want them to be, that we feel like the only way to be peaceful or to be healed is if we are isolated. So I think that's really pointing to something really important. A young mentality we often have is that, if they're not just like me,
Mm.
then I don't want to be with him. But you're
Right.
absolutely right. It's that willingness to allow someone who brings something different and
Mm.
to allow your healing to be based on connecting with something different rather than, isolating myself so I can heal. Like that's the only
Mm.
way that I'm going to be able to heal.
Yeah, because I can only see a certain, that I only have a certain span that I can see. And the person that I can be with, that person can see things that I don't see because I didn't live in her shoes. I didn't understand. I don't know because I haven't had those same life experiences. She's had different life experiences that can help me understand things that I would never understand before because I could never see through that lens. And
Yeah.
especially from a male, female, like my wife thinks differently to me, and it's good because it's a challenge that helps me grow and helps me see things better. And if I can just say this, I had this analogy about how we a lot of times feel like we don't have enough, or we
Mm,
can't, we don't feel like not enough. That phrase not enough in different aspects in our life shows up. And
yeah.
when it comes to socially being isolated and alone, this is really significant. But I came to revelation that we have more than enough in our life. But if we can't see, for example, if you picture yourself in a room and everything that you need is in that room, but that room is dark,
Mm,
you can't see. So even though everything is there, if you can't see it, you can't go to it and you can't grab it. And so when you have another person in your life that can see something that helps you see better, you
yeah.
can see those resources that have been there all that time. And then you end up less socially isolated and alone, more connected because you can see the things that you need and you can go for it.
Yeah. Like that openness, that reception to someone
Mm,
else's perception, feedback,
mm.
interaction, all that
Yeah,
good stuff. Yeah.
right, right. And it's our pride sometimes that we don't want to receive that sometimes, or it's just admitting, okay, I can't see everything. I can't know everything. But I wanted to go back to just, I appreciate your story, Candice, about like how you were listening to, and I was listening to. This is why I really, but the dialogue that we just received from growing up in society, societal structures that reinforce a lot of stories that aren't really relevant to us, right? But we
Yeah.
receive them just for whatever reason. We think that we're supposed to pursue things the way that society says that we're supposed to.
Yeah.
I was like that too. And I discovered a navigation device that's inside of me
Yeah.
that I need to really get in tune with. So in geriatric studies, there's something called an age-friendly approach.
Mm,
And the age-friendly approach helps providers and healthcare professionals serve older adults better. And there's 4 M's.
mm,
So those 4 M's are mentation, the mentality, it's mobility, how people get around, it's medication, the kind of medications they're taking. But this is the most important one. This is why I'm mentioning all of this.
mm,
What matters
mm.
is the other M. And what matters is at the foundation of the health promotion, the health goals of the older adult, of every person.
Yeah.
Because if they're not really pursuing what matters, then they will not have motivation to pursue those other things like
Yeah.
medication, mobility, getting right, in their mentation.
Yeah.
So what matters really means what is everybody here listening and myself have to ask ourselves what matters to me, what
Yes.
really matters to me, and ask it at 5 years old, 10 years old, 25 years old, because that dialogue is going to take over otherwise of what you're going to try to pursue, meaning me, because this is what I did. You're
Yeah.
going to try to pursue things that aren't really what matters to you,
Yeah.
and then you find yourself in relationships that aren't really what matters to you.
Right.
So yeah, so pursuing what matters is it's the cusp of our health.
I love that. So that leads me to my question. How did you make because, okay, the work that you do around geriatric studies and caretaking and teaching people how to care for people who are later in life, how did you make, because you said initially you were listening to hip hop, doing your thing, like maybe, didn't have that direction. How did you make that distinction with what matters to you? Because I would imagine that, obviously a couple decades ago, what mattered to you was very different than what matters to you now. But what
Mm,
had you evolve into this profession that you do that is really about caring about what matters to other people?
man. So yeah, no, I started listening to that voice inside because really I wasn't before. I thought that other this is what happened. This
Mhm.
is when it really hit me. I was in an organization. It was a Christian organization, but it was more they're kind of close to like a cult, but they
Mhm.
call these like a sect where they get kind of controlling. And
Yeah.
so it got controlling to the point that they were trying to tell me what relationship I needed to be in. And
Mm.
when they did that, I thought, well, they're my leaders, so I'm supposed to just they know what's best for me, right? And I don't really maybe I don't need to have a say in this. I was wrong. But that was when I started going along with that, I started to hear this voice inside of me ask the question, Jeremy, is this what you really want?
Yeah.
You know? And I've been hearing that voice since then. And that navigation, that's what I call my navigation device. And I've been nurturing that voice. I
Yeah.
also call it vision,
Yeah.
vision, internal vision inside me, and that is inside of each and every one of us. And it's not academic, it's not professional, it's human.
Yeah.
That's the way I believe God made us. So um, I've been nurturing that, and ever since I've been nurturing that, I started to surrender a little bit more, to because a lot of just like you were saying, Candice, a lot of our ideas didn't really come from us. We just grew up with these different ideas, especially as Black people
Yeah.
in the United States or really almost anywhere. But we we have a majority group that has their own ideas on the walls of a lot of buildings and everywhere, and it brings a lot of messages
Yeah.
that we don't really work through until we get older and be like, wait a minute, I don't really have that same idea. And my idea isn't bad just because it's different than that idea,
Yeah.
And when I started nurturing that and started to surrender and let go of old ideals, that's when I started to see a little bit better, and recognize those opportunities when they came in front of me and receive them. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times their stuff can be right in front of me and I could recognize it, but because I've been in touch with this self-efficacy and meaning self-efficacy meaning my value of myself,
Mhm.
in this world, I can see, you know what, that's good. And that can be good for me. I can have that, and because my self-worth and self-esteem came up. So that's how that really started going for me.
Yeah, I love that you're basically describing in other words than what I use. I usually talk about core value alignment and
Hmm.
how important it is to just be like understand your core values. And I love
Hmm.
that you phrase it as self-efficacy because that's what I mean. It's like, that the idea of self-love is so cliched and like overused, but I don't think anybody, not anybody, but oftentimes I don't think that people take the time to understand, that it's not just about how I treat myself on the outside or, the superficial things. It's really about the understanding of self, right? Knowing myself.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
100%. Knowing who I am and why I'm here,
Yeah.
and what makes me come alive, what really am I passionate about? And knowing that that isn't a bad thing because that was a gift given to me, that when I nurture it, I help other people because at the end of the day, it's all that's where the legacy comes in. Like my program's called Tellegacy,
Yeah.
and it's all about how can I help other people? Well, it's by those gifts that I have. Well, how can I nurture those gifts that I have? Well, I have to protect it. I have to know that it's a gift, and I have to know that this world needs it.
Yeah.
And so that makes me a little bit more bold and a little bit more brave. And because there's going to be a lot of voices or ideas out there, not voices just random, like I'm talking people that have your best interest in mind, but they just don't know everything that's inside of you.
Yeah.
So they may say things and you have to have, meaning myself, has to have the kind of value in here to know, no, what I have you need, especially in healthcare. Like in healthcare, there's a lot of health professionals that they put on the expert hat and the patient comes in and the patient starts talking about their life and the expert says, well, I'm the expert, I don't need your opinion about your
Yeah.
life. So the patient starts feeling like they're another number and that their opinion and what matters to them doesn't matter to their doctor.
Yeah.
And that reinforces, well, maybe what I'm care about doesn't really matter. And
Yeah.
that's not true. That's a lie. It matters. And that professional should be reinforcing that they care about what you care about,
Yeah.
so that they can have a better health and everything and better relationships.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're training caretakers in that paradigm as well. Because I think there are so many things in our culture, in our society that say to us, what you really feel doesn't matter, who you are doesn't matter, where you come from doesn't matter. This is the system, this is the way it's got to go. I feel like in order to combat that, it's exactly what you're saying. As
Mm,
individuals and also as individuals who, not just in healthcare, any of us who take care of others,
yep.
right? Like that understanding what matters to me and understanding what matters to you. And I love that you're educating people with that paradigm. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think sometimes people are afraid. See, I'm a curriculum guy, so I can see structure, I can see abstract structures. I can see culture and I
Yeah.
can see how it's getting played out a little bit when I'm walking around in these buildings and everything. So I think a lot of times people don't want others to know that they don't know something, right?
Yeah.
They want to pretend that they know everything because if they don't, then they can't help you. It's not true. The reason why I'm sharing all that is because when a person comes in and they want to ask about how can I help them, I start asking them questions. Well, how
Yeah.
about you? How about your life? What's going on? What matters to you? And that can be intimidating for a professional. It feels like they have to be an expert, so they won't even ask what matters to them because I'm supposed to know everything. So if
Yeah.
I ask them questions, that means I need to learn something, and that means I'm not an expert anymore. Oh my God,
Yeah.
like no, no, no. Like whenever someone comes in for help regarding their life, they're the experts of their own lived experience. They're the
Yes.
experts of their life. It's always going to be collaborative. Like
Yeah.
it's never going to be just me, and this goes into a whole nother subject, but it's never going to be me just giving you a medication because a
Yeah.
lot of times in healthcare, unfortunately, there's a lot of training just focusing on what do I need to medicate you with?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
here's the truth. Our bodies are healing machines. They heal all on their own. Medication is meant to help the body do what it already does,
Yeah.
not to actually heal.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother thing. But the whole point is that each professional, each person must help the other person understand that they have the overall decision making ability to increase their health, increase their relationship, the quality of the relationships and everything. No one can actually be a pill to
Yeah.
help. We like, if I am just that pill, I guess, that helps your body and your life do what it already does, right? I'm
Mhm.
not going to do the healing, but I'm going to help make the healing more possible for your life. That's the way I see myself as a professional.
Yeah, and it's a facilitation, right? It's a facilitation
Mm,
of what you're coming with. And what's funny is that, it's not, it applies to relationships all around. Right? We
yeah,
so often, like you said,
yeah.
we so often feel like we need to come into everything as the expert of it. And I
Mm,
think that even that shows up in dating and relating. Like if I'm coming in as the expert, I'm
wow.
here to already know and to already be everything you want me to be.
Mm,
And so I'm not going to ask you the questions. I'm not going to, relay with you and develop
mm,
relationship with you. And it's interesting, you know, I always talk about, my experience with healthcare, and I agree with you. Like I do believe that the body heals itself in a big way. And the best experiences I've ever had with healthcare workers were with people who actually developed relationship and
mm,
wanted to know. And I asked them questions, they asked me questions. It's like that understanding that it's okay to not know,
yes. It's
right?
okay to
Yeah.
not know. It's okay. And like, so we train our students, right, to have these relationships with older adults, right?
Yeah.
And some of these students haven't had these kind of one-on-one conversations. So one of the things I tell them is, if they're telling you, let's just make up something. If they're telling you they love race cars or something, and you're like, well, I ain't never raced in a car in my life, so I don't feel like I'm an expert at that subject. So what do I say? I'm like, no, it actually, you don't need to say like, well, I don't know anything about that, so I can't really engage in that conversation. No, it's the opposite. I don't know anything about that, so I'm interested in this. Because why am I interested in this? Because you're interested in this, and I
Yeah.
want to know why. How are you? I can ask a lot of questions because I ain't never experienced this before. So that means I have a whole lot of questions that I don't need to be the person that contributes and talks about this subject. I can ask
Yeah.
and I can learn. And in romantic relationships, definitely that can be the same. It's on a bunch of levels. It's the
Right? Like there's so much, and I
Mm,
feel like everything is an exploration. Every time we come in
mm,
contact, we get an opportunity to be in that exploration. And my encouragement is always, when I talk to clients and things like that, you want to be an explorer around it because you
mm,
can ask and you don't have to already know. And I think that, it applies to every industry and
mm,
everything that we do. And I love how you're using healthcare as the example. And I also want to know more about Tellegacy because we haven't really
mm,
talked about, specifically what that system is. I was on your website and I was like, this is just a genius structure. Like it's beautiful. Talk about it, to the people out there who don't, they've never heard of it or don't know what it does.
absolutely. I was sharing about when I heard about older adults who were dying from social isolation and loneliness. At the time, I was developing a curriculum to help underrepresented and underserved university students, multicultural university students. And after I heard about older adults, I'm like, wow. I later discovered that older adults are so underrepresented and underserved in our society in the United States that they don't make that popular list of those who are underrepresented and underserved. So I
Mm,
said, started to further develop the program and said, you know what? Why don't I connect university students with older adults? And then I said, let's connect university students to healthcare fields because I knew enough to my wife is a nurse. So
mm,
I knew enough to know that university students in healthcare fields, most of the time, a lot of the departments at least, have the students pursue volunteer hours to complete their requirements. So I said, that's interesting. So
yeah.
for volunteer hours, they can meet with older adults. Like, so we had the students trained and meet with the older adults. They meet once a week, virtually, over the phone, or in person, and usually between 4 and 8 sessions. I call them. I don't call them interviews because an interview is person just asking questions but not contributing and sharing their own life, but we
Yeah.
want the students to share their life as well, and vice versa with the older adult. So at the end of the sessions, we take the notes that the student shared, wrote down and shared with us, and then we create a legacy book and give
Mm.
it to the older adult to reinforce that their story matters. They
Yeah.
matter, and their story is one to be told.
Yeah.
So, that's the program in a nutshell. There's a lot of things, and I'm really excited about the training for the students too, because I think that makes a big difference too.
Yeah, no, it's just an amazing thing. I actually was going to ask you how I can get my father signed up for it because I think what happens oftentimes with the older adults is, it's different when you're the family of an older adult, right?
Mm,
And an older adult who can have a lot of family and still experience isolation because there's all those layers of like that we're family and we have history and all of that.
mm,
And I think what's brilliant about your program is that it kind of eliminates that part,
mm.
right? So people
Yeah.
can actually just get to explore and connect and older adults get an opportunity to tell their story to someone who doesn't already feel like they know about them, somebody who already has preconceived notions and things that they think about them, because that's another thing I think that gets in the way of relating and relating healthfully is that
Mm.
we come with this already knowing about the other based on
Yes,
what we think we know about older
yes.
people, what we think we know about someone we've been related to, what we think we know about, all Black men this, all Black women this,
Mm, mm,
like a lot of times just in our moving about with relationships, we come with so much. I know you. You want to attract a partner who genuinely loves you as a woman. You want to break generational cycles and experience the fulfilling romantic relationships that your mother and maybe even your grandmother didn't have. You want to learn how to release the pattern of navigating your love life through past hurts, trauma, and abandonment issues. So I've made this easy to consume, effective digital course just for you. It's called A Love Life That Loves You Back. I'm Candice Harper, a relationship coach and hypnotherapist, and I would love to help you create that love life. Just go to bit.ly/loving relationships for WOC. Can't wait to see you there.
mm.
And I
Yeah,
think, like I was saying, the brilliance of your program is that it requires coming with a clean slate,
yeah. Yes, yes, totally. Yeah, that I think
right?
I was just talking to one of my colleagues about this yesterday, but they having that objective point of view and coming in and understanding, oh, this person actually doesn't know a lot about me. So I have to actually authentically share with them
Yeah.
my life. What do I say my life is? Because a lot of times when we're talking to people we think we already know, we we think that they already know our story and who we are. We assume, right, that they already know, and we also assume that we already know like everything. A lot of times when I talk to people, I discover something new about my purpose in my life and what I'm here for and everything. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't even, that's another cool part of this that I didn't think about. So when an older adult is meeting with a student and vice versa, a lot of that happens in the conversation. Even the student, they're between the ages of 20 and 35 usually, and they're coming into this conversation sharing about their life, and they're realizing, whoa, one student say, I realize I don't have to be in such a rush anymore. I'm listening to this older adult just talking about how they cherish their life and they took time in the small moments, to really appreciate what they have. And it made the student realize, wow, I'm 20 years old, but I can stop and realize that I have some really nice things in my life. And, gratitude is something that brings more of those things that we enjoy into our life. So, that's one of the things we do in our training is talk about appreciation and of the conversation and gratitude.
It's a brilliant training.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a brilliant training.
So much. Thank you.
Right.
We're actually starting to create. So right now we're starting to create the curriculum platform on another level where we're providing continuing education units for social workers, nurses, etc. Because one of the things, Candice, that I realized in being in geriatric education is that it's incredible, but it's true that a lot of healthcare related majors or fields in colleges only provide about 2 weeks of geriatric training,
Mm.
to take care of older adults. But then they graduate, and 80% or more of the people that they serve are over the age of 65. They're older adults. And
Mm.
so there's a gap in the training. But even those 2 weeks of training that they do get, it's technical training. It's not social. It's
Yeah.
not learning how to listen and appreciate a person for being a person, right? It's not, so that humanizing part of training isn't there. The medical part is, but the humanizing part isn't. And I teach on social determinants of health,
Mm.
to which involves relationships in a
Yes.
really big way. So
Yeah.
that's why we're really, we want to do a lot with the curriculum, because that social part of training, you name it, social workers, occupational therapy, physical therapy, they do exist. They are there to a degree, but
Yeah.
we really want to bring in those things that we're talking about right now.
Yeah, that social aspect. I always call it emotional currency, like sickness as emotional currency sometimes, because I think that when we're not related with as a human and we experience age or sickness, body changes and things like that, we're not getting that kind of relation. It not only diminishes how we feel about ourselves. I think oftentimes we think ourselves even sicker, because
Mm,
I think that, you know, there's an attention that comes from having an ailment, right? And as we get older, obviously our chances of having more and more ailments are higher. And there's an attention that comes from it. But then when it's unsatisfied, that attention, it's not a satisfying attention. It's just you've just treated my issue, or you gave me my surgery or my pill or whatever. There's that need to either exacerbate it in my mind or to
mm,
have even more sickness. I feel like that's a common
mm,
human thing, because when we don't have the skills to be able to say, I need a connection, or if we
mm,
don't have the awareness and the wherewithal to be able to say, I just need you to talk to me and
mm,
see me, look me in my eye. And a lot of
yeah.
times I think older adults don't necessarily have that, because I come from, what, Gen X, we're like the first generation that even went to therapy.
Right.
And there's so many older adults who, they're in a place of, I want to connect and I want to be cared for. So I get sicker and sicker and sicker, because that's a surefire way to have someone pay attention to me, but it's an
Mm.
unsatisfying attention.
Yes, absolutely. When it comes to, so there's four components of our training. And the reason why I'm sharing about this is because it starts, like you said, in the mind. It starts, having that gratitude in our, there's having that mental power really can help change physiology in a lot of ways. The research has shown, like it can help you feel better, right? And so when we have less anxiety and we're feeling more confident, even research shows that when we are anxious, it it can our immune system goes down, right?
Yeah.
So if that means that the opposite is true, when we increase that gratitude, our confidence, and knowing that we're here for a purpose, that can increase resiliency, a sense of resiliency, and that resiliency is physiological too.
Yeah.
It's like when you're going through something sick, or that's why visualization has been used for cancer patients, right?
Mhm.
Because they visualize their medication working, or they visualize their body getting better, and a lot of times that does increase wellness. So there's four components of our training. There's visualization and mind and goal setting, mindfulness.
Mm.
Third one is growth mindset, and the fourth one is reminiscence therapy. And because people need to be heard,
Yeah.
people need to feel heard. That's the
Huge.
yeah, that's at
Right?
the
I mean,
top.
you could almost make anybody fall in love with you just by listening to them,
Oh
because
my,
everybody needs to be heard.
everybody needs to be heard.
Yeah.
And I think that's a healthcare, it's an epidemic.
Yeah.
Loneliness is an epidemic, but loneliness is only comes from when people don't feel heard. And when they
Yeah.
don't feel heard, they don't feel a sense of connection socially. And so, the epidemic might be that people aren't feeling heard. And
Yeah.
so, I don't know, probably a lot of folks listening here heard that the US Surgeon General announced the loneliness as an epidemic in the United States about a few months ago. So that's interesting,
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I share that, because the reminiscence therapy is about feeling heard, but the other three are helps both people to appreciate their present, mindfulness, their future, visualization and goal setting,
Yeah.
and also their past, growth mindset. Who am I becoming? What did I learn from my past? And how did that help me to grow? And what's my opportunities now that I realize those things that I learned from those relationships that I
Yeah.
had, right? So like those are those things that I think can really help one for their health, but also to enhance their relationships to a whole nother level.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's sort of pinpoint some things, because we talked earlier about, in our younger years, what are some ways of being, some things that we can choose that
Mm.
increase our likelihood of having connectedness as we get older. And I think maybe if we work backwards a little bit, so with the work that you've done with senior adults, what do you think are some of the driving behaviors that contribute to the experience of loneliness? And what are some things that we can sort of counter so that we get to experience connectedness instead?
Yeah, so I'm going to start in this particular session. This is beautiful. I'm really enjoying talking to you, Candice, and
Oh,
I'm so grateful to be here. So the first thing is, if people aren't feeling heard, we can start by listening to our own dialogue. And how
mm,
we do that is journaling or just writing down what we're thinking about.
yeah,
And why are we doing that? Why is that important? Because we need to start paying attention to what we care about and what matters to us.
yeah,
So one question we can ask ourselves and then answer that question is, what do we love? Very
mm,
open-ended question.
yeah,
What do we love? And no judgment, right? So you can say, I love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which I do. And or I love listening to music. I love Sade. She's my favorite
yeah,
R&B singer.
yeah,
I love, so, and you can just keep going, right? Because you're exploring. And by the way, this is non-academic, right? Like there's not there's not a lot of structure in this, because it needs to be open, and it needs to be open. What do you love? What do you enjoy? Write it down. Fill up the whole page,
yeah,
and don't hold back. Don't say it needs to be like this or like that. And then over time, do that every day, when you wake up or before you go to bed, and just it'll help you get more into tune. It helps us become more in tune with those things that matter to us. And
yeah,
then when we come in contact with a challenge that challenges those things, then we can stand ground and become resilient and keep pursuing those things that matter to us, because it is a matter of our health when we do that. So from a practical standpoint, to journal. And journaling doesn't mean you don't have to have, see, here we go, we have our own picture of what we think it is, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it doesn't have to be what anyone thinks it is. Like it could be, for me, I go on my phone and I just, put on the audio and talk into the phone and just put in my thoughts there, and or I will get a notebook and I'll write down something once a day, or I'll email myself,
yeah,
and I put in my own email my own thoughts. And there's some apps, there's Headspace, different things like that. But I don't use apps that much. I want to make my own app. So like that's what I do. But we need to do that so that we get in tune with that navigation device inside of us, that vision.
yeah. I love that. So the journaling, the getting into self conversation, and what was the question again? What do I love?
Yes. What do you
Yeah.
love?
I love that. So, what do I love? Everybody write that down. That's the question
Mm.
you're going to be asking yourself as you're journaling. So, now what's another thing? So, as I'm on this journey of getting in self relationship and understanding myself, what's most important to me, what matters to me,
Mm.
What do you feel is sort of like a next phase? We're sort of creating this as we're talking. So what do you feel is sort of a next phase as I'm
So that,
moving along through that? Because this works for every kind of relationship you want to create, right? I
yes.
think even if we're talking family relationships that you want to mend, if we're talking about, new relationships you want to attract, there's
Mm.
a beginning, middle, and completion to how to evolve into that, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
get it. I love the start of finding out what matters to me. So what do you think would be next after that?
Absolutely. So the next thing is to put it in your calendar.
Mm,
Like you write down these things that you love, put in your calendar what you want, something based on that. Like for myself, maybe I'll get myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at least at least once between
yeah,
these 2 weeks, right?
yeah,
Maybe I'll listen to my favorite artist. Um, and I mean, there's some of us that are good at that. Maybe they're doing it already. Think of one other thing that you can do and enjoy your life, because that's what we're here for, is to enjoy our life. A
yeah.
lot of times we get into a relationship because we think that that person's job is
Just to
to
make us
is
enjoy.
to make us enjoy our life. That
Right,
person's job is not to. You will discover very quickly that that person
right.
is not, because that means that then we're in this zone, and we didn't talk about like narcissism and everything like that, but like we can be like, I'm not talking about like get just for myself. I'm just talking about, let's bring in some things that we love and enjoy.
Yeah,
And then the next step is to implement that in our life a little bit more so that we enjoy our life. But once we get another person in our life, then now that we have learned how to enjoy our life, we can become a role model for our whole society, but that person that we're with as well, and showing them how they can enjoy their life and how we can enjoy our lives together.
yeah,
And giving is a big process there. Now, here's the problem. A lot of folks that ain't taking care of themselves that much have an empty tank, so they don't feel like they have a lot to give.
yeah,
The reason why the first step is to write down what you love and start pursuing those things in little ways is because you need to have a full tank. You need to be filling up your tank so that you actually have enough to provide for someone when you're with them. And you need to, in marriage, it still continues. Like,
yes.
I need to be at 100%. I can't be at 50 and take care of anybody. Like, I
Yeah,
need to be at 100% so I can take care of it. And as a caregiver, I talk about this a lot because, oh man, caregivers can feel more isolated and alone than the person that they're taking care of oftentimes,
yeah.
right? We need to make sure that we're incorporating, putting those things in our calendar, taking care of things, doing things that we love so that we can help take care of others and enjoy our lives together.
Yeah. So, finding out what matters to me, then engaging in it, fully engaging in it, allowing myself to fill up for overflow. And, I feel like then we evolve into the interaction with others. Because I was talking
Mm,
earlier about how, because I think a lot of what you're describing too is part of the healing process, right? This is
mm,
how I heal. What I get
yes.
conscious, what my relationship is with myself. I get aware and awake to what I love, what's important to me. I think that takes healing, right? This
Mm,
is how I'm letting the past fall away and really getting focused into what is present, right? Allowing myself to
mm,
get present. So as I'm doing that, and what I was talking about earlier, I think a lot of times that there's that space where I turn it into, this is just about me,
mm,
right? And that's where the isolation thing comes
mm,
in, because I start to feel like the only way that I can be peaceful, that I can stay connected with myself, and that I can be engaged in what I love is if I do it all by myself. And I don't know
mm,
about you, I identified myself as a lone wolf for a lot of my adult life until I understood the importance of community and the
mm.
importance of relating and relationships. And so, what do we think would be the next step after that? Now that I've engaged in the things that I love and I understand that overflow and filling myself up, I was watching a Instagram reel the other day, and the woman was like, "I don't mind being alone. I don't mind isolation because this is where my healing lies." And it was beautiful what she was saying. However, this piece was missing. So, how does your healing apply to how you interact with others? So, what
You
do we
know,
think the next?
the last one is to allow.
Mm.
Allow.
Yes, I
Allow to
love that.
overflow. Allow, because when we start to overflow, people are going to start coming and bringing their cups.
Yes. And
And
sometimes
when
the
you
cups
do,
are big.
yeah, that's right. They got big, but you know what? I created the engine of replenishing, so I'm good. I'm good to go, and I need to just allow, because those things are now, the things are going to just come. Hey, look, I grew up in a Black gospel church. So like scriptures show up in my mind sometimes. So I
Yeah.
remember there's one that says, "Seek His kingdom and His righteousness; all these things will be added to you as well."
Mhm.
And it says the kingdom is inside of you, right? And so, but when you're nourishing, when you're genuinely, authentically nourishing those qualities inside of you, you're
Yeah.
nourishing the whole kingdom, right?
Yes.
That's what you're nourishing, and
Yeah.
there's an overflow, and that's when all these things just start happening. All
Yeah.
these things start getting added. It's serendipity. It's incredible, and when it happens, you need to allow it.
Yeah.
And the big key of allowing is to really understand that you're valuable. Because a lot of things came into my life before, and I felt like, wait, why is this coming into my life? I'm just little old me. You know what I mean? And we must not. We must instead allow and let it keep allowing, because that's what we're here for. And let
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. It sounds like you're talking about the receiving when we allow, and also
Mhm.
I talk a lot about oftentimes when we see something that is out of alignment or that we want to make wrong, we quickly want to fight and resist it.
Mm.
And I think within the word allow, people often assume that allow means accept, let someone walk all over me, let it be what it is with a sacrifice,
Yeah,
right?
that's
And I
yeah.
yeah,
And that's sometimes the fear. Like so I had a period in my life where I was just giving, 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 like all the time, but I wasn't taking care of myself.
yeah,
And that was the problem. So I was giving, giving, giving. And I felt like people started taking advantage of me and different things like that. But I realized that what was happening, I was giving, 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 but I wasn't replenishing.
yeah,
And so I felt like if I keep giving, people are going to take advantage of me. No, when you really take care of yourself and there's the component here is really important. When you grow that sense of value of oneself, then you're going to value your boundaries,
yeah,
right? The boundaries that you have and create are going to let people know this is to this extent is what I can give and offer.
yeah,
I can't, I need to also take time to take care of myself, and I need to take time to take care of the other priorities in my life. And
yeah,
those are boundaries. And in especially in relationships, romantic relationships, especially, we all have boundaries that,
yeah,
just because I'm married doesn't mean that, I'll put it this way, it'll sound better. Just because my wife is married to me
uh-huh,
doesn't mean that I can just, I can call her right now at work and just tell her about my life, right?
yeah,
There's some boundaries that she has that I need to respect. And I have boundaries too,
yeah,
and when we respect those, then we're nurturing each other's relationships. We're respecting that relationship we have with ourselves,
yeah.
and we're respecting that relationship that we have with each other as well. So there are
Absolutely.
boundaries.
Absolutely. I love how it's so cyclical because there are boundaries. And for me, I believe that the boundaries are something that we set up for ourselves, right? I think there's
Mm,
sometimes confusion about that a boundary is something you put out there. So you can't do this unless I say it's okay. And really it goes back to that when I'm loving myself, filling myself up, I know what I'm down for and what I'm not down for. I know what I
mm,
want to engage with and what I don't want to engage with.
mm,
And I can be a stand for that. So if I tell
mm.
you that, I got to go to bed every night at 10 o'clock, but you trying to keep me up and I'm staying up with you until, midnight, which is something
Wow.
that happens with me and my partner. That's why I use it as an example.
That's right.
It's me that's crossing my own boundary. And,
Mm,
we have to be willing to know that when we let someone else cross them, it's because we're a space. We're a space of
Mm,
allowance for that, right? So if we
yeah.
and so it's that delicate balance between accepting, allowing, knowing that you are who you are and being okay with it, but still being a stand for what is important to us and still being a stand for what we say we're
Mm.
trying to align with, right?
Yeah, and some people are afraid to do it because they're afraid that they'll be mean, right? Or they'll
Yeah.
be unkind to them. But here's the thing, like when you're filled up, you can say something that you mean without being mean. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You can say something that you mean without being mean. It's when we come off real mean and rude, that's because our tank is near empty.
Yeah.
That's we waited too long to
Right.
clear those boundaries, right? And then now, like we're close to empty. We're like, I can't do this anymore. I can't take care of you. I can't. I have to go to bed. Leave me
Yeah.
alone. You know what I mean? It's because, and I do the same thing because I want to go to bed at least at 9 or 10 o'clock sometimes.
Yeah.
But I need to make sure we all need to make sure that our tank is at the place where we can say something that we mean and without being mean.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. So, okay, we have figuring out what do I love, what matters to me,
Mm,
that healing aspect, then the engaging with it, allowing myself to fill myself up, then being in a space of allowance, and then
mm,
also being a stand for what is important to me within that space of allowance. I think that's a perfect little cycle of
mm,
causing connection and
mm,
relay.
man. And it's
Yeah.
and it's modeling the behaviors, not telling other people, it's showing them so
Yeah.
that other people can start to pursue it too. Because they're like, man, I really admire your schedule and how you do that and how you respectfully respect the boundaries of others, but also communicate your boundaries and the things that are important to you.
Yeah.
That's really good. I'm gonna implement that in my life. You know.
Yeah. I really, without having experienced what it means to be, and as I'm getting older, obviously you experience it more and more to be a senior adult.
Mhm.
Like I said, I look at my father as an example right now. I really think that the willingness to engage in this way as a practice, just with this
Mm,
awareness, is part of what prevents us to getting to a point where we are experiencing loneliness and isolation. Because I do
mm,
believe that that's an experience, like what you were talking about with the dark room. So if I
mm,
can't see what's there for me and what's possible, I'm going to experience what I think is possible. And if I haven't been able to create this in my life, this ability to connect with people in this way, I could get to a point where I don't know how to do it and I don't see any other possibility, right? And
mm.
I experience loneliness and isolation. And I think the antithesis of that I'm hoping that people really can understand and walk away with is that it's not about catastrophizing old age. It's not
Oh,
about, oh God, I can't be alone. It's what choices am I making now? Am I doing these things? Am I engaged in what matters to me and filling myself up? Am I
mm,
allowing other people in my life, allowing them to be who they are, where they are, and
mm,
also being able to stand in my boundaries? I think that's the sort of elixir.
mm.
Without
Yeah,
knowing for sure, I can't say it 100% because I haven't gotten to 80 yet. God willing and the
yeah.
creek don't rise, I'll get to 80, 90, 100 years old. But I think that that's a lot of what generations before us didn't necessarily understand or have.
Absolutely. And I tell people a lot, and like that's the goal, getting older, aging well,
Yeah.
aging very, very beautifully. That's the goal. I don't like the alternative. I love, the aging well thing is good.
Right.
So that's where we all want to go. And I encourage people to write down your vision, write down the vision. How
Yeah.
do you want to what do you want to look like or be like? Who do you want to be like when you're 85, 90, 95, 135 years old? No,
Yeah.
like how do you want to live there? Because when we know, we can see it. When we can see
Right.
it, we can move toward it. And being older isn't scary things they're only scary because it's the unknown,
Yeah.
right? But when we write it down, we become familiar with our vision, the things that matter to us when we get older.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we push these things off, just like you said, Candice, was like, well, I don't want to think about that because I don't want to become old and alone and things. And so let's just avoid it.
Yeah.
No, there's two things. How can I have a vision for my life in the future? But how can I implement that? Number two is, how can I implement that right now?
Yeah.
How can I do that right now?
I
You
love
know,
it. I
and
love it, Dr. Holloway.
this is beautiful, man.
So now this has been amazing. I do want to segue into my standard question that I ask all of my guests, which is it's related and not related at the same time, but I think it's an important part of the conversation just because we're having it. But what do you love most about being a person of color?
Oh, I tell this to a lot of students because
Mm,
there are students, especially in education, that they felt like they were the only Black students in the room,
mhm.
and they're like, I don't want to have to represent, but you know what? That's one of the things I love the most is
Yeah.
representing. When I'm in the only Black person in a room, I get to represent. Show some of these people, I might be the only person that they meet that looks and acts like me. When I lived in Korea, for
Mm,
South Korea, for 1 year,
yeah.
and I was an English teacher, English as a second language. I might have been the first and last Black male teacher that
Wow.
they ever had.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, when when I think about it that way, and I had some of my students raise their hands and say, am I your first African American male teacher? Or
Mm,
if I am, raise your hand. Like, they were all white females, because they were, there's a lot of white females that want to become teachers in the United States.
yeah.
So 80% of them raised their hand. Like,
Wow.
they were 20 years old, never had a Black male teacher before.
Yeah.
So I love knowing that I'm a representative of people that look like me. And I
Yeah.
want others to know and embrace that as well.
I love it. I love it.
Mm. Yeah, man. It's cool. It's cool. So
Well, I
cool.
want to say, Dr. Holloway, I'm so glad that I ran into you on these internets.
Mm.
And, I do think that you are just an amazing representative of the type of person, like person overall, that, is bringing value to this world. And, I think that should be known by as many people as possible. I think that however you want to engage and work with people, I hope that it is abundant and plentiful. I want you to share with everybody how you want them to find you, what you want them to
Mm.
find you for. If you are taking on interns at Tellegacy, I'll come and be an intern. But if you're taking on people, to be in the program, do they have to be students of the University of North Dakota?
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And what is the qualifications for the seniors? Like,
Mm.
tell the people
Abs-
what you'd like for them to do.
Absolutely. They can first, I love to speak and share workshops, keynote um, deliveries. So jeremyholloway.com is where anyone can go to, especially they'd like for me to come and speak with their team, speak at their event, because I love talking a lot about this. The
Yeah.
other is with Tellegacy. Tellegacy does exist outside too of University of North Dakota. So, because I started it before I became a professor.
Mm.
So, folks can go to tellegacy.org, and they can also reach out to me. My email is jeremy.holloway@tellegacy.com, or they can visit me as a professor to jeremy.holloway@und.edu. So, and just reach out to me and connect. I love connecting. I love social connectedness. So definitely reach out to me. There's a lot of different ways, different things that we can do in collaboration together. So
Yeah. Awesome. So all that information you gave, I'm going to put it for anybody who's watching later, listening later. I'm going to put it in the show notes wherever you find or listen to this show. Also, if you're watching on audio, I'll make sure to put it in the lower third. So I'll put those graphics up so people will see it as you're speaking it, and they can
mm,
get in touch with you. And I just got to say thank you so much. I feel so grateful to have met you. And I hope that in the future you'll come back on the show, but also I have some communities that I'd love to connect you with as well, because as a
mm,
speaker, just as someone who just has a really great message in the world. I feel like it needs to be heard. So,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much, Candice. It's such an honor and privilege to be a part of what you're doing. This is legacy right here. So I just want to tell you thank you for building this for many people to not only follow, but many people to take this example and run with it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying it. Makes me a little emotional when you say that because I do feel like this is my baby, my legacy. And so, yes, thank you for that. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All
Thank
right,
you.
everybody. Thank you so much for being with us for another show. We're going to have another show next week. I don't know who the guest is going to be next week, but we're just going to keep rolling with it and see how it goes. It'll be the exact guest that you need to hear.
Mm,
Everybody who came in while we were live, thank you for being here and listening and paying attention for as long as you could. If you couldn't see the whole show, come back. I'm going to do what I do, edit it up, and you can watch the whole thing, listen to it either on Spotify or you can listen on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And that
mm.
is it, my sweethearts. I love you so much. Until next time, keep being unapologetically lovable and give yourself grace. All right, bye now.
Mm.
Mwah, mwah, mwah. Thanks, Dr. Holloway.
Thank you.